Hello, this is Wild One, and I've decided to start a new playthrough with one of my favorite solitaire games to play, and it's based in the Dungeons and Dragons universe, and it's called Castle Ravenloft. This is the first of three board games that came out in 2010 and 2011 that followed what Wizards of the Coast called the Dungeons and Dragons Adventure System. They've released a new one called Temple of Elemental Evil, which I also have. I think it follows closer to D&D 5. This sort of came out around the time that D&D 4 was introduced, and D&D 4 was not very popular. People didn't like it too much, the whole daily at-will utility powers thing. This game incorporates that, but it's still a lot of fun. The only problem is Castle Ravenloft is really hard. I mean, this is a very challenging game to beat, and they kind of corrected a few things and made some adjustments for its sequel, which is Wrath of the Shardalon, and so it's a little less challenging. And then after that is Legend of Drizzt, which is it's less challenging even more so. But what I want to do is kind of just show you how you would have originally played this game before I go through perhaps a playthrough of a campaign that I have developed, and campaign rules that I've developed that allow you to level up your characters and proceed through adventures with the same characters. With this game, you don't do that. You tend to just pick an adventure and play it, and then your characters have an opportunity to level during that one adventure, but only once, and then that's it. So let's go ahead and open this up. Now, there's not a whole lot in here. There's a reason for that. So here's the rule book right here, and it's a very, very short rule book. There's 14 pages, which seems kind of like a lot, but I mean there's a lot of pictures that take up a lot of space in the rule book, so it's not particularly involved, and the rules are actually really not very complex. And then there's your adventure book. This is where those different adventure scenarios are, and you set those up. And what I'm going to do is Adventure 2, which is called Find the Icon of Ravenloft. And we're going to try this adventure out. But let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the components of the game. We have tiles. So this is a tile-based dungeon crawler where the dungeon master is the game itself. The AI of the game drives the game. So what you're doing is you're beating the game as opposed to trying to beat other players, and you're trying to beat the AI DM. So Castle Ravenloft comes with 5 characters that you can play. Here's Arjan, the Dragonborn fighter. I'm going to go through these. I'm going to go handheld and go through each of these heroes so you can kind of take a look at what they are. Here we have Arjan, the Dragonborn fighter. He has 17 armor class, 10 hit points, 5 speed, and a surge value of 5. And I'll talk about surge value when I actually get into playing the game. And then he has a special ability called Defender. And it just kind of says here, you protect your friends. So while another hero is on the same tile as you, he or she gains a +1 bonus to their armor class. And then he has a series of powers. Now this is how you build the power cards for each of your characters. You'll have a group of power cards that you can play throughout the game to do things like attack, support, heal, that kind of stuff. So then we have, speaking of healing, we have Thorgrim here, our dwarven cleric. You are a champion of the dwarven gods, sent to eradicate the evil deep inside Castle Ravenloft. And as you can see, he has 16 AC, armor class, 8 hit points, 5 speed, just like Arjan, and a surge value of 4 hit points.
He has a special ability called Aid. You know healing techniques. Yay! At the end of your hero phase, if you did not attack, one other hero on your tile regains a hit point. And then, just like with the with Arjan, he has his collection of powers. He has one here that he gets no matter what, which is called Healing Word. And then he has a series of powers that he gets to choose from a collection. Then we have Alyssa the Human Ranger. You are master of bow and blade, with keen senses and dungeon skills. You are determined to stop the evil of Castle Ravenloft. She has 15 armor class, 8 hit points, 6 speed. 6 speed, fast, she's very fast. Surge value of 4 hit points. She has a special ability called Scout. You are a master explorer. During your exploration phase, you can explore one unexplored edge on your tile, even if you are not adjacent to it. Again, this stuff doesn't make sense until you understand the rules, but I'm just kind of showing you how each of these characters lay out. And here's, she has her own set of abilities. And we have Cat, our human rogue. You are stealthy and sneaky, and a master of sudden strikes and quick escapes. You laugh at danger and have come to Castle Ravenloft to satisfy your curiosity and acquire treasure. 14 armor class, 8 hit points, 6 speed, also very quick. She has a special ability called Trap Expert, so you're an expert at finding and disabling traps. You get a +5 bonus when you roll to disable traps. And she has a special power called Sneak Attack, plus others that she can choose from. And then the fifth of our heroes is Immaril, the Eladrin Wizard. You are a powerful spellcaster from the magical lands of the Feywild. You seek arcane knowledge and magical treasure from the ruins of Castle Ravenloft. He has 14 armor class, 6 hit points, 6 speed, also pretty quick. Surge value of 3. He's pretty low on the hit points. What do you expect? He's a wizard. Wizards always get screwed on hit points. Always have to kind of stick to the rear, He has an ability called Lore. You know the secrets of monsters. While another hero is on the same tile as you, he or she gains a +1 bonus to attack rolls. Then he has a special ability called Face Step, that he gets that card. And then he gets to select from a group here as well. So those are our heroes that we have to choose from. And there are 3 that I'm going to choose from when I play my adventure. But let's kind of go through what else we have in the box here. So we have some other villains here, some other enemy characters. They come up in particular adventures. We have a starting tile here. You know it's a starting tile because it has the word start on it. Sorry everyone, I just realized I was using the wrong light source. So there was a lot of glare coming off and certain things were not looking quite right. So there's a start tile there. We have a collection of dungeon tiles. Lots and lots of dungeon tiles. Look at that. And that's just half of them. And we have another batch over here. Now what I've done is I kept the dungeon tiles separate from your standard dungeon tiles to these that have special, there's special names on these, and they tend to associate themselves with a particular adventure. Like here is Count Strahd's Crypt. Here is a secret stairway, and so on. Well, here's the chapel. The chapel will come in to play in the adventure that I'm going to play for this playthrough. Now, even though I'm going to stick to the basic rules of the game, which means I'll probably die, there are maybe 1 or 2 little things I'm going to do to tweak it, to tweak the game and the rules of the game. One of the things I'm going to do is, we have these treasure cards here, and you get to win these when you fight. When you fight and defeat monsters. Then we have adventure treasures, so these are treasures that are specific to adventures. The one that we're going to get to see as the goal of the adventure we're playing
is the icon of Ravenloft. Now, there are two types of treasure cards. There are treasure cards that don't really give you anything physical. They give you either like a fortune or a blessing. So I've split them out. So these are all fortunes and blessings. So like for example, here's an example of fortune called the Breath of Life. There's a blessing, and here's a blessing called Surround Them. So there's a collection of these fortunes and blessings, and I keep them separate. The interesting thing about the three games that were produced, like I said, Castle Ravenloft, Wrath of Ashardalon, and Legend of Drizzt, is that you can combine components between the games and actually you could have heroes from Castle Ravenloft who play in Wrath of Ashardalon and so on, and you can combine cards. But sometimes it kills the theme. Like for example, Wrath of Ashardalon, a lot of the adventures take place in underground caves or under a volcano or things like that, and not the same thing as walking through the halls of dungeonous levels within Castle Ravenloft. So it doesn't sometimes make sense for certain cards to be combined. So one of the things I do is there are these encounter cards, and these happen a lot. And this is why the game is so challenging, is because these encounters can be devastating to the heroes who are trying to play. But the encounters are also thematic, so they tend to focus on, in this case, all these encounters tend to focus on what might happen within Castle Ravenloft. So, like, there's an event called Strahd's Minions, and of course this is relating to Count Strahd the Vampire. It wouldn't make sense for that to turn up in, say, Legend of Drizzt, for example. So these make the game super challenging, very difficult. We have in here all of our monsters, and you probably saw this right when I popped off the top of the box and took the instruction manual out of the way. This big dragon. It's a skeletal dragon. It's called the Dracolich. And he has a name. His name is Gravestorm. I don't know if you can see that with the glare, but his name is Gravestorm. He's a Dracolich. And then there are other monsters, very large and small ones, different types. We have some blazing skeletons here. We have some spiders. We have some different villains. The villains are all these gray figures. So there's this werewolf here. Somewhere in here, there he is. So here's Count Strahd himself. There he is. Looks like he's commanding someone to do something. He's like, I command you. Skeletons and so on. There's lots of different monsters in here. They are tied to cards, monster cards that would be drawn as part of the adventure. Now, again, like I showed with my playthrough of Legendary Encounters, I have kept my cards in deck boxes and have sleeved them. So this red box here is a box full of monsters. These monsters are from all three of those adventures. So, and the reason that I did it this way is that there are some that can be combined. You can bring, say, snakes from Wrath of Ashardalon into the Castle Ravenloft, or I believe there's a spider swarm. Like for example, here's a spider swarm. It's actually from Legend of Drizzt, but you could bring this into Castle Ravenloft and it would fit just fine. There's some things that might not. I mean, there's certainly things like, drow elf related enemies that wouldn't make sense to be in Castle Ravenloft. But what we're going to do, since we're going to try to play by the standard official rules of the game, I'm only going to play with the Castle Ravenloft monster cards. And that's what these all are right here. So the reason I can tell that they're Castle Ravenloft is the Ultra Pro hologram is kind of blocking it a little bit. But if you look in the corner here, there's this little M-shaped little thing. That's the symbol for the Castle Ravenloft game. So Wrath of Ashardalon has in the corner a volcano. And then Drizzt, which I believe I
think you saw this one earlier when I was showing him one of these other cards. Speaking of Drow, there's a Drow duelist. But you can see in the corner here that there's two crossed swords. That's Legend of Drist. So what we will end up doing is we'll only be playing with the monsters from Castle Ravenloft until I show you my custom campaign, which is kind of a combination of some rules that some other folks came up with and posted to Board Game Geek, and then a combination of my own tweaks and sort of a campaign building setup for the game. So for now, I'm not actually going to set up the game and play the adventure just yet. I'm just kind of showing off the components here as part of an introductory video. So we're going to put these monsters back. We'll deal with them later. So I have another deck box full of treasures. So the treasures that were in here were all blessings and fortunes, and I combined all of these from all of the games. So all of these treasure cards, these blessings and fortunes, they come from all the different adventures. So like here's one that's Castle Ravenloft. Here's one that's Legend of Drist, and so on. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm going to play the game with all of these combined. The other thing is that if you play the game by the rules, you don't split the blessings and fortunes from the regular physical treasures. And I do, just because one of the things you do at the beginning of the game is you give each hero a treasure to start with. And it doesn't make sense for them to get a blessing or a fortune because they have to that usually is played like immediately. So we're just going to play with the treasures that came with Castle Ravenloft. And it's this batch on the top here. You'll notice that I wrote on the sleeves some numbers here. Well, what happened was they published Castle Ravenloft and decided after the fact that they wanted to apply value to the different treasures. So starting with Wrath of Ashardalon and continuing on to Legend of Drist, they added prices to the cards. So for example, here's one from Wrath of Ashardalon, which has a price of 1,000 gold. So someone on Board Game Geek went through the cards for Castle Ravenloft and assigned prices to them. And so I took that advice and assigned prices to the cards myself. Now, the prices don't matter much if you're just playing an adventure and collecting treasures, but they matter in a campaign setting. When you're going from adventure to adventure, and you have the opportunity perhaps to purchase treasures between adventures, depending on whether you collect money or not, or if you want to sell one of these. I would say if you're going to sell them, you would sell them for half their value. Also for the campaign, I tend to not permit you to start with any of the cards that are worth more than 600. So I would take like the 600 and 300 gold cards and allow you only to select from those. And then randomly, of course. And then all of the other more expensive treasures you can only get through adventuring. So again, we're going to play with these. We're going to play with the treasures over there. And then I'll explain how I allow you to choose, whether you choose from the physical treasure deck or you choose from the blessings and fortunes deck. So I'll put all these treasures away for now. And I noticed I didn't put my adventure treasures away, so these should go back in the box here. Put those back in here. I was talking about the heroes. Let me get one of these folks out here. Let's get Arjan out, our Dragonborn fighter. He has special powers. So I showed these earlier. So he's got Dragon's Breath as a special card. Then he can select a utility power, 2 at-will powers, and a daily power. The utility power is normally something you can only use once. The at-will powers are what you would use, at will again and again. They don't usually go away. And then the daily power is usually something, it's very powerful,
and the result of using it is that you can't use it again for that day. So, and then again, in the context of us just playing one adventure, it doesn't really matter. You use it and it goes away. But if you were in a campaign, this would become available again in the next adventure. So let's look up these cards and see what they look like. So I have 3 more deck boxes, a green one, a black one, and a blue one. And originally I had these arranged so that one was a set of dailies, one was a set of at-wills, and one was a set of utilities. And then I decided to, on the advice of someone else that I play board games with on a regular basis, actually group them by class and by race. It makes it a little easier to find them, so that if you're looking for fighter cards, you just go look for F for fighter. They're in alphabetical order. So, for example, this one here actually starts with fighters. So here are all the different fighter cards. So what I had done was, the black cards are daily powers, the green cards are at wills, and the blue cards are utilities. And so these are all the fighter cards from all 3 of those sets. And unfortunately, that special card, Dragon's Breath, is not in here. That's because it's a racial power. So I'm going to put these other cards away here. And we'll set this deck box aside for a moment. And then here's the some of the other powers for some of the other classes, going all the way to Wizard at the very end. Like I said, they're alphabetical. The racial powers I put all at the front. Also in this front deck, I have the sequence of play cards, and I've got a ton of them. And the reason I have a ton of them is because there's meant to be 1 per player, and this is a 1 to 5 player game. But I took all of the sequence of play cards from all 3 of those games, from Castle Ravenloft, Wrath of Asharlon, and Legend of Drizzt, which is why I have 15 of these. So these are very, very handy, quick reference cards showing you how to play through each turn. So they're just very simple cards. Once you understand the rules, it's really easy to just follow through. There's 3 phases when you play. There's a hero phase, exploration phase, and villain phase. Then it explains what you do in the hero phase. And then you flip the card over, and then you complete the exploration phase, and then you complete the villain phase. And then at the bottom there it says the player to your left goes next. In other words, play is clockwise. So when we get into the rules and how to play the game, I'll be referring to this card a lot. But back to what we were talking about with racial powers. So Arjan, our Dragonborn fighter, he has this Dragon's Breath, if it'll focus. He has this Dragon's Breath there. That's a racial power. So in front of all of the different class cards, I have all the racial cards. So the class cards start with the Archer, A for Archer. I'll put these back in the deck box here. So right in front of those are all the racial cards. And we have Dragonborn, we have a couple Dragonborn cards, we have a Dwarf, we have 4 Drow cards, an Eladrin card, and a half Orc card. So there are 2 Dragonborn cards here. They're both daily powers. One is called Hurled Breath. And then it kind of tells you what Hurled Breath does. And then flip this card over after you use the power. When you flip the card over, you're done. That's it for the day. Unless you have an ability or a blessing or a fortune comes up that allows you to flip a daily power back over. But this is the one we're interested in. Arjan gets this card for sure, called Dragon's Breath. It's a daily power. And it says that
With a roar, you breathe a deadly blast of fire that engulfs your foes. You get to attack each monster on your tile. The attack does not count as an attack action, which means you get to do this and then also attack. So this will all make more sense once we kind of get into the game. So I'm going to put the Rachel Powers back. We'll put these sequence of play cards back in here. Let's look at the fighter powers. So he gets to select one utility power, 2 at-wills, and a daily. And so there's a collection of dailies here. There's another fighter that's in another one of the boxes. I think it's looks like it's Wrath of a Chardalon. But since I combined them all, you could use any of them you want. You can combine or whatever. So here's one called Comeback Strike, which is for a fighter that's actually in Wrath of a Chardalon because of the face in the corner. Arjan's face is in the corner of this one here. So he's got, you know, among other things, he has this daily power called Brute Strike. He has one called Come and Get It. And he has one called Precise Strike. Then there are at-will powers. And like I said, these are the ones that you don't use once and flip over and never get to use again. These are your abilities that you use when you're fighting. So as part of the Adventure System games, you don't start with weapons and armor and all of that you have to keep track of. You might earn those as treasures. When you start the game, you don't have to maintain any kind of weapons or armor or equipment. It's just implied that you have something that you can attack with. So you know, there's this cleave here, which implies that maybe you have an axe, and you attack an adjacent monster, and you can cause damage with that. Here's one called Tide of Iron, Charge, just different types of abilities. So these are like your standard abilities that allow you to fight. In some cases, for like the clerics, it's something that allows you to possibly heal. Then there are these utility powers. Some of these are, yes, you have to flip them over, and some of these aren't. So these are not always quite the same as the dailies, but in general they tend to be that way. They usually say something at the bottom like flip this card over after you use this power, which is basically the same thing as what a daily does. But here's an example of one called Inspiring Advice, and at the bottom it says flip this card over if the hero hits with the attack. In other words, you get to continue to use this card until they actually successfully hit with it. What I intend to do is pick 3 characters, and then we'll pick their power cards and start that adventure. And then we'll kind of talk about, in the next video, we'll talk about how the tiles work and how the adventure plays out. Most everything you need to know is right there on that quick reference card. So my intent is to play with that fighter that I showed you, Arjan. And then also I want to play with the cleric, Thorgrim, so I'm going to play with him. And then I'm also going to use the ranger, Alyssa. And we have our starting tile here, so let me move this up a little bit and I'll kind of show you the way the game sort of starts. So we have this starting tile here, and there's some stairs leading to the outside. I have a big Plano box here, and it's full of tokens and all of the other punch outs and miniatures that come from all 3 of those Adventure System games. So in advance I've already separated out the hero miniatures that we're going to need. We'll just kind of set this aside here. So this one tells you on the bottom, if you can read it, let's see if you can read it there. It tells you it's Arjan, the Dragonborn fighter. So that's him.
here is our ranger, Alyssa. See her there? The miniatures are very well done, and you know, a lot of people have painted them. They're just plastic. They're not pewter or anything like that. And then we have Thorgrim, our dwarf cleric. There he is. And again, it's on the bottom there. It tells you who he is. So we're going to play with those three. And they occupy a space here. So when we start the game, depending on the rules of the adventure, they'll tell you what you can and can't do. But usually you get to start your players anywhere you want to put them on this tile around the start stairs, or possibly even on the stairs. It's like around the stairs somewhere like this. So you might put, say, your fighter and your ranger up front, and maybe your dwarf cleric kind of hanging behind the fighter over here. The fighter's going to be the one who's going to get out in the middle of the action. The ranger's going to attack at range, and the cleric's going to hop in and heal folks and try to keep people alive and undamaged. This is really all I was going to show for now. And then in the next video, we'll kind of get into setting up the adventure that I selected and kind of running through the rules of the game while we play. And I feel like I'm kind of pessimistic that I'll probably lose the adventure horribly, but it'll still be fun just to kind of show you what the game is like if you just play with the standard official rules that came with the game. And then what I want to do is, after I've done that, I'd like to share sort of my house rules for a campaign, which will be kind of a morphing of some campaigns that they've discussed on Board Game Geek, and also some rules of my own to govern how they level up, how they become more powerful, how they gain treasures and money, and then what they do in between adventures as far as acquiring treasures or acquiring new items through purchases. But that's it for now. I'm going to go ahead and conclude this, and the next part we will start the game itself. We'll do the setup, and then we'll kind of step through each turn for each hero and the mechanics of the game and how the system works. Until then, this is Wild One signing off.